So yesterday we started explaining the hisponenus, the route, the mode in which a person is able to achieve an avos Hashem. And that came after establishing that in order to get to the ava of the nefesh, the ability for the nefesh to have an avos Hashem, there has to be prior to it a hachno and a shiflus, a form of self-critique, self-censure, being judgmental about oneself, to the point where a person is crushed. And that crushing of the self is a means, is a tool to then be able to reach what was described in the Pasuk, Smeilei Tachas L'Reishi, the Rosh Hashanah. The Rosh Hashanah, which is the Ava, the hidden Ava, the Ava Suteris, which is in the Nefesh. When it comes to having Avos Hashem, the Pasuk tells us there's three kinds of Ava. There's Ava B'chol Lavacha, Nafshech Chol Meidecha. And the first half, what we're in the middle of now, is explaining what is this Ava, the B'chol Lavacha, B'chol Nafshecha, which he's described as an Ava which is Kihu Chayecha, because it's your life. And so he explains how in everything it's made up of Gashmias and Ruchnias, and the Chayas of the Gashmias is dependent on the Ruchnias. And were it not to be for the Ruchnias, the Gashmias would not be able to exist. And that is a person can recognize in their own self, similarly with all the things around them, and ultimately to the whole of existence. So they come to a realization, what we explained in the end of the last paragraph we learned on Omid Chof tests, how were there not to be a Chayes Eliki, the world would cease to exist. And so it's an awareness of the centrality, the primacy of the Chayes Eliki in every single thing. Let's continue. Omid Chof tests. And therefore, kol hanivroim v'ha'olamos betelim laha'or v'chayes ha'eliki ha'machai u'mehave eisa. By that being the reality, whether we recognize it or not, but the reality is the case that everything is dependent on the Chayes Eliki, then what that means is that everything in existence is fundamentally bottled to that Chayes Eliki. Otherwise, it would be it wouldn't be a natural, coherent combination of the two things, the Gashmias and Ruchnias. In order for the Gashmias to maintain itself, it has to have a bittul to the Ruchnias. Why? Since their entire metzius, their kiyum and their chayus, so those are three things. So their existence, the maintenance of their existence, the longevity of themselves, and the dynamism of themselves, the chayus, all comes from the Ein Chayes Eliki. Lochein him beteinim lahayir eliki. So therefore, they are bottled to it. 1 second. We were just saying before that the Gashmias is like a Helen Vehester. It's like a clipper. It's like a shell. It's a concealment. And we know generally we talk about the relationship in the Gashmias and Ruchnias. There can be an antagonism. Here we're not saying there's an antagonism. We're saying there's a bittul. What's the pshat? K'moi gives an example. Haguf shebatel al nefesh. The way the body is subservient to the soul. The body is like we usually give a mashal of a merkava, of a chariot, that wherever the rider wants to move, the chariot follows. So similarly, the body follows and moves to the instructions of the nefesh, wherever the nefesh wants. The nefesh wants the head to move this way, the head moves this way. It wants the leg to move that way, it moves that way. Not just they move in accordance with the Chayes Nefesh, but they also respond to the desire of the Nefesh, which has the Ratzon Nefesh has the power to control all keiches of the Nefesh. Your seichel, your midas, your everything is dependent on the Ratzon, and they manifest and perform their various functions through the body. Lefishahu makeiron. The reason why that bittul is there is because the nefesh is the makir of that chayas. B'chol keiches b'teilim elav. Sorry, this is referring to the keiches hanefesh. The keiches hanefesh are mushrish in the rotzen of the nefesh, and that's why they obey the rotzen of the nefesh. B'chol keiches b'teilim elav. U'kameikein evri aguf b'teilim elav. And similarly too, the limbs of the body are bottled to it too, to the rotzen of the nefesh. Ad shegam, to the extent that if you decided it was your wish and your desire to place your foot in scalding hot water, ein meniya klal, there's nothing to stop you. There's no objection. Right? And that reflects a bittul. All the limbs are entirely subservient and subdued under the control of the nefesh. Because they acknowledge, they know, they're aware that that's their entire chayas. The sibus human, the whole reason for their existence. And it's a quid pro quo. He understands. How is the body going to get the chayas from the nefesh? By having this bittul. It's by dint of having this bittul that the Avrim are able to be makabel the chayas from the nefesh. So too, all nivroim, not just the Avri Aguf, all of existence acknowledges the hand that feeds them, that maintains them, that brings them into existence. And as such, they're bottled to it. Let's just have a look in the note. So these were the notes that Rabbi Rashab wrote. But he wrote next to the main Sorech Lahatik that you shouldn't copy them. And so in the first editions they weren't copied, but now we copy them, put them in, and because the Rebbe said you should put them in and note that the Rebbe said don't copy them. But this is actually a very interesting note. He says v'heda habitul beguf, when there's a lack of obedience and subservience in the body, it reflects that there is some type of flaw and puncture and problem with, God forbid, with a particular limb. That it's not capable to absorb the chayes of the nefesh. And so it all comes from the part of the body not having the necessary bittul, the necessary subservience to the nefesh. And it's no longer, therefore, a suitable recipient of the chayes nefesh. He adds, and this could explain maybe the manner in which there is a type of therapy to medical intervention to try to resolve the problem of paralysis, a lack of pu'ul, a lack of dynamism in a particular limb because of its the problem. What do? One of the methods they use is to sort of have like a rush of chayas from the nefesh into that limb to try and overcome its paralysis.
Which is what happened to the Rabbi Rashab, right?
So it reflects on the problem that Rabbi Rashab had himself with the paralysis in his hand, and later, after Anat, would go to have this electrolysis, I think it's called, to try and bring back a bit of feeling into his hand. But that's just an interesting note. Okay, back into the Pnim. So he wants to he's just explained how it is in Eilam Hazeh. So in Eilam Hazeh, the entirety of Eilam Hazeh, the reality of Eilam Hazeh, it's not necessarily how you see it, it's not necessarily how you use it, but the reality of Eilam Hazeh, say your own guf, and say all of the Nivroim around you, they are fundamentally bottled to the Chayes Eliki, which enables them to exist, enables them to persist, and enables them to be active and dynamic. And you can see this with even more clarity in the heavenly realms, in the sky. We're saying davening that the entire heavenly realms, the legions of the heavens, they bow down to you. The reason why the sun sets in the west is because the Shekhinah is in the west. The reason why its orbit is from the east to the west, to the point where it sets, it goes down, and that is its bowing, the way it sets itself down in the west. And similarly, all of the stars which orbit in the ninth sphere from the east to the west, as is explained, those notions more clearly in Rambam Hilchos Torah and also in Sefer Hakira. Now, even though their own nature is to orbit from the west to the east, nevertheless, they orbit from the east to the west. Why? So it goes against their nature. Because the Shekhinah, which is Malchus of Atzilus, Shekhinah is Lashon Nekeva, like Nukva is Malchus, and the union of Shekhinah is the idea of dwelling. That's the whole point of Malchus Atzilus, is to be hemshekh into Elam and to create Elam as Biyah. So Shekhinah is a term to refer to Malchus of Atzilus, and the Malchus of Atzilus is the Mairav in the west. Like it's known about the four directions as they pertain to the upper realms. So you have north, south, east, and west, and up and down. Maila Mata. So Mairav hu b'chinas Malchus. Mairav is the direction of Malchus. Okay, Kiyudu, right? If you know these things. And it is the source and the creator and what gives chayas to the entirety of the worlds of Biyah. V'zehu sivuvam l'mayrov, and that's why they're orbiting to the west, which is like the entirety of existence for the entirety of Elam Biyah, down to Elam Hazeh, and down to the Kechavim and the Mazalis, that they're all bowing down and showing their subservience to the source of their chayas, which is Malchus of Atzilus. Just like similar the way we described it by the Guf. So just like it is in the Eilim Esel Yoinim, that everything is directed towards Mairav, to the west, to Malchus of Atzilus, same too, it is in the earth. Everything is bottled to the source of its life, the divine energizing force. When it comes to our world, in the Tzava Ha'aretz, how it is on earth, cows in the field, the trees in the forest, our own physical bodies, it's not so apparent how they are in complete nullification towards the source of their life, the Chayes Haliki. But that is the absolute truth. Just like a person can tell that their own physical body is bottled to the enlivening force, the chayas of the nefesh, their personality, their character, right? It's not like you're made up of two components. Your consciousness, your personality, and all those types of things. Then you've got a finger, you've got a shoulder, you've got an elbow, and they're two entities. And there has to be an agreement between them how things are going to be. No. You're one entity, and who's the boss? The boss is your consciousness, your characteristic, your nefesh. Taka sometimes nefesh bahamas, but your nefesh, not the gashmi. So just like you can see it in yourself, You can come to appreciate it in every single other aspect of creation, the inanimate, the vegetative, and also the animal kingdom. They're entirely subservient to the divine force which enlivens them and enables them to exist. And it's through this bittul that they have that they are able to maintain their chayes. Were they not to be bottled, they would not get the chayes, and there would have to be problems. Like it says in the pasuk, Yiras Hashem l'chayim, sha'yidei ha'yira v'ha'bittul davka yidei ze'em chayim v'kayomim. That it's through the pu'ul of yira, which is associated with bittul, that a person is able to be chayim, to exist, to be alive, to be dynamic. And that's why malachim are more alive, they have more chayas than human beings. Because they have more bittul. The more bittul you have, the more chayas you have. And in truth, we would also have a lot of chayas, were it not for the case of the chetei tzadas. Prior to the chetei tzadas, there was not an intention. The intention was that we would also have chayas and be chayim la'ad, have eternal life. Were Adam Rishi to have been in a real state of bittul, to have lived for the entirety of existence, all 6,000 years. The bittul shebanivroim zeu sibus chayusam v'kiyumam. It was because of the lack of bittul during the chetei tzadas that precluded the possibility for human beings to live with that level of chayas, to the same degree as malachim. And this is the reality. The bittul determines the chayas. The extent of the bittul means the more bittul, more chayas. The achesh, most people think bittul means downtrodden, garnished. Adrabah, bittul means chayas, because it facilitates the opportunity to be hemshekh more chayas. You should bottle to it. You're not contesting it. You're not repelling it. Since the entirety of their existence and their chayes is from alikus, therefore when they are bottled to alikus, they become more suited and more absorbent, more of a keli to the chayes aliki. And that's how they live, and they maintain themselves and they sustain themselves. And that's why it says in the pasuk, I showed you the chayim, and you should choose life. The pasuk says, see it, because you can actually see it with clarity how this is the case. That from a person's own experience, they're able to perceive godliness, this reality. Each person, if they would have an honest appraisal of themselves, they would understand that this is the real, even though it's not what they don't think about it, they won't realize it. It's not something that just comes to a person automatically. It's a hisbonenus. To understand what is the relationship between your guf and your nefesh. And a person, if they're able to be misbeinen about it and understand the circumstances of how they have a guf, how they have a nefesh, how they come together, then they will be magish. They would able to be they would have that sense themselves. And through themselves they can come to perceive and realize that there's no difference in the rest of the world. That is the true reality of existence. That everything that exists by dint of the fact that the chayes aliki which enables things to exist. Yeah? So what's going to happen? When a person contemplates all of this, how in every single thing there is a divine energizing force. There's a gilo elikus that is maintaining it. And in every single thing, what is the primary component? It is the chayes aliki. And all creations are in fact, in truth, truly subservient and nullified before this divine energizing force. So both to the Chayes Haliki which is in them and to the origin of the Chayes Haliki which facilitates it. So when a person who contemplates all of this, what's going to happen? The impact of that realization, of that internalization, of that truth should arouse in a person a deep desire and love for godliness, for elikus. Once you realize that the fundamental truth of existence is the Chayes Haliki, which maintains all of existence, that should elicit within a person a true desire for more elikus. You want to engage with the reality of existence, not with the superficiality of existence. And so all of your aspirations, your desires, your yearnings are for divine things, for divinity itself. Why would you indulge and waste your time in things that are superficial, material, which are fundamentally just death? Without the Chayes Haliki, they don't exist. They're not dynamic, and within a short while, they rot away and decay. So, it seems that it should be, if you really internalize this bonus of what we described, it should be a clear choice. They are mobis mitzaratzim hoivim v'nisadim. They are temporary. The main focus and aspiration would be for the primary aspect of reality of existence, which is the Chayes Haliki. And it, without doubt, shouldn't come into question the idea of separating and seeing something purely in material, with material eyes and as a material thing. The natural state of a Dava Gashmi is to be subservient and bottle in truth to this Eir Chayes Haliki. When a person takes that physical thing and treats it in a manner in which it is not used for elikus, it's not fulfilling its function, its divine function. Because the human being just wants to have anah and physical pleasure from that physical thing. The human being is capable of ruining the harmonious natural state of existence. The harmonious natural state of existence is everything is bottled to elikus. The human being, through using it in a selfish, self-serving way for his own pleasure, causes a disharmony between the Dava Gashmi and its Chayes Haliki, which is supposed to be bottled, which is in truth bottled to. Because the entirety of existence was placed in the hands of people and the heart of man. Through the Chetei Tzadas, there was a general, overall disjointedness in the whole world. And every single person can take that to a further extent. Through this, that they want to get pleasure from the physical thing. It separates it. It just makes it disjointed. And so too the opposite is true. When a person takes a physical thing and desires the ruchnius, its Chayes Haliki, to use it for a higher purpose, so he elevates it, he connects it, he intensifies its bittul, he makes it more chayes, and reveals how that thing is bottled. So beautiful arichastic hezber of this is bonus. Yeah? But themes that we're familiar with, right? Okay. Let's keep going. And this is what we mean when we say that a person has to reaches a level of Ava of Hashem, kihu chayecha, because it's your life. The just like a person loves their own life, their liveliness, the fact that they're alive. A person is able to acknowledge that it's their consciousness, it's their will and their desire and their personality and their character, all these things that aren't so materialistic. They're from the nefesh. Person loves himself. Person doesn't love. The person loves themselves and has self-satisfaction. It's not because of their flesh or their blood. They like their personality. And they want the development of their character and their personality. So the same thing true. Once you realize that everything is imbued with a chayes eliki, and everything is bottled to that chayes eliki, that is its chayes, just like you see it in yourself. When a person realizes that elikus is the source of all life, the chayes of the entire world and all of creation is from elikus, and that is the main thing. The person is going to want and love and desire Hashem, just like they want more of themselves, because they think about their nefesh, their personality and their character. They really want that. When they realize the whole world, by parallel, is imbued with elikus, they're going to want more elikus, because that makes everything better. So in everything that the person engages with in the external world, his daily affairs, like eating and drinking, and work, business and eating. The person is not going to desire the pleasure, the physical pleasure from the food, or the desire for making more money. The focus will be on the elikus. Eating and drinking is why. What is the kavanah of the eating and drinking? Is in order to get chayes from the food, in order to be able to intensify a person's limudat Torah and avodas Hashem. Ukamayma, like it says in the Gemara, cham v'reicha pikchin. Spicy wine, fragrant wine will make a person smarter, sharpen them up. So you're going to have a nice glass of wine. The nice glass of wine is not in order just to have pleasure from the nice glass of wine, but through the drinking the nice glass of wine, you'll be able to engage in Torah in a sharper way.
That's what Rava was doing.
Until he had eaten the meat of the ox, the bull, his mind was not clear. So it's not, you don't have to, the point is that once you reach this recognition that everything in the world is fundamentally elikus, is dependent on elikus, so you don't focus on the gashmi shebadav, you focus on the ruchni shebadav. And you're able to then, what would otherwise be seen as an indulgence and just a gluttony of eating fatty meats and fancy wines, is now seen as a tool to serve Hashem, because you're focused on the goal. The whole kavan of eating and drinking is in order to learn and to daven. So a person be very careful then regarding luxury things, which are just for pleasure. They're unnecessary, superfluous. Since the person's whole purpose in life is a desire for elikus, in a manner of doing it for the right intentions, as we said above, person will for sure only make use of what he needs and not overindulge. So the same thing is in business affairs. Whole kavanah should be that by making a profit, that will allow you to have the freedom to engage your mind and your heart to learn Torah and to daven. mitzvahs and be able to fulfill mitzvahs, and be able to more successfully do mitzvahs stocking with all the money you're making. So that such a person would never, they wouldn't engage in work, in business, in a manner which would completely interrupt and confuse them and disrupt them from being able to learn and daven. Because that would undermine the whole thing. The only reason I'm working is in order to be able to learn and daven. So how could it make any sense to work in a manner that's going to stop me learning and davening? All this is achieved how? Through isponenus. It's not going to happen automatically. You can't just read the theory of what we described over here. You have to be misplainin about it. There has to be a applied way of thinking this through and internalizing it. Shemisplainin hatev. The person has to really engage in this contemplation. To the point where it becomes really true. And your own truth. It's not that it is true. It becomes your own truth. How everything that is fundamentally and its main and its core is truly godliness. In all the physical and material things for themselves, they're as if they don't exist before. Because they can't exist by themselves. So they're completely insignificant. And if a person can do that, they will be aroused to this type of ava, of desiring only elikus, and that permeating everything they do, eating, drinking, working, and it will be in the way that we described above. And a further thing that's going to come out of it, this will also have a tremendous effect on undermining and subduing the person's Yetzer Hara and their natural tendencies. Because the person's natural tendency is to want and enjoy and lust and desire physical things just for the physical things. Very, very human, very normal. Very normal to desire the physical things of this world. And to desire them for themselves, not for any ulterior motive. I don't just want to have this geschmacke Stück Fleisch in order to learn and daven. I want to have this geschmacke Stück Fleisch because I want to have this lishma for the Stück Fleisch alone, for the pleasure I get from the Stück Fleisch or the glass of wine. That's natural. It's midas tivian. But if a person engages this isponenus, they can go to a certain extent. They can achieve a subduing of that tendency. Those natural tendencies become subdued. And the primary focus will be on the ruchni and not on the gashmi. In truth, you're not teaching your nefesh abamis and Yetzer Hara something they don't really fundamentally know themselves. The what? That there's no logic in really wanting physical things for them for their own sake. Because they are on their own death and decay. They have no substance themselves. It's an illusion. It's an illusion that they have any self-sufficiency. But the Nefesh Yetzer knows this too. So it stands to reason you should want what's primary and not what's secondary and periphery. It's not even something which is tofel, secondary, peripheral. That is even too much to say. Because fundamentally it's really nothing. Without the chayes eliki, it's not just an insignificant thing, it's a nothing. And so these tendencies, the nefesh bahamis, to want to just indulge in the physical world, are able to be subdued. Because really deep down, the nefesh bahamis itself understands that there's no logic to this. To the point where the nefesh bahamis also loves Hashem, because it buys into this. If the isponenus is good enough, and it becomes my emes, not just the emes, but my emes. That's how I taka see the world, see myself, the world, and everything around me. Then, it's not happens overnight, but gradually you can subdue the nefesh bahamis to the point where the nefesh bahamis itself will also want things, because it stands to reason. The nefesh bahamis is not unreasonable. To really just want the ruchnius and the elikus in everything, and not just in this thing, which is which doesn't have any real substance on its own. So more than just wanting the elikus that's already in the world, this ava, the b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha, is in a manner where you want the chayus of elikus to be revealed in the world, and dispersed in the world, and apparent in the world. It shouldn't just be my emes, but this emes should be apparent to everyone and everything. Just like when a person loves themselves, loves their personality and their character, the desire is there should be a lot of self-expression and self-manifestation. Once you realize that the true source of all existence is Elikus, then similarly you're going to be aroused to this sense that you want the world to be filled with Elikus. That's what we mean when we say v'ahavta b'chol levavcha. So a person's misbaining. On Hashem Echad, there we described it, how everything is dependent on the chayes eliki. A person can come to v'ahavta b'chol levavcha. So two aspects. You have a rotzi l'elikus, you have a desire for elikus, and you have a desire for elikus to be revealed. Two separate things, two components, two aspects. And that can spill over even into your nefesh bahamish. This can impact this truth because it's a logical argument. Not trying to say anything other than what should be readily apparent that if a person is willing to sit and think long enough and hard enough about the nature of existence. And then afterwards, what did I say? Sorry. And the next stage is the ava turns away from a tnua of rotzei and becomes a tnua of shuv. What's the shuv? How to realize that? You want it, your ava is an unbridled ava. This is what you want. And then there's the shuv, the realization that you have the tools and the means in which to achieve that. Yeah? The Torah mitzvahs that you perform in a state of ava. So you're performing the Torah mitzvahs out of a state of ava. That's the ava b'chol nafshecha. That's his beer of ava b'chol levavcha, of b'chol nafshecha. And the next stage of the Maimah is going to explain how the whole premise of this ava, the whole hisponenus, is rooted in a discussion about what? About the chayas eliki, which is mechayas ha'olamis, which, as we're going to explain, is itself an is elikus the way it's very mugbal. In order for chayas eliki to be mechaya every single aspect of creation in all of its plurality and complexity, the chayas eliki has to be itself very mugbal and limited. And so this fantastic hisponenus, which is life transforming for the person, is ultimately very limited as well. It's a very, what you might want to call it, a balabatisha hisponenus and a balabatisha ava. It's contained. It's mugbal. That's why it's capable of being so successful. Because a person is capable of doing it. It's not asking for you to burn all your bridges, to stop eating, stop drinking. Okay, you don't have to have so much taivas. You don't eat and drink excessively. You can still eat drink a nice glass of wine. You can still eat. And your focus is entirely different, right? But you're in Welt. You're not. After the brutal self-examination you did to yourself before davening, which was, a real mevachinle, and achno v'shiflus, and you don't know where to put yourself. Build yourself up. You can be misplaining. You can think about something, and you can realize the reality of existence. The reality of existence can become my reality, and I can improve myself. I can become a better person, and engage in Torah, mitzvahs, eating and working and all these things in a way that's dedicated to Elikus. Fine. But it's mugbal. So it can only achieve so much. When it says that it wants to have Gilu Elikus in the world, what type of Gilu Elikus does it want to have in the world? It only knows about Gilu Elikus, which is mugbal. Its grand ambition for reality, what's its ava, its desire is what? There should be more Chayes Eliki in the world, which is mugbal. Doesn't want a revolution. It wants an enhancement. Doesn't want to transform the world. It wants to make the world better, improved, more aware of what it is. But it's not asking for a revolution. Not in itself, not the person himself, and not in the world around it. Come, let's do this paragraph, and we'll see that. V'hinei. Forgive me for going so fast, but I wanted to get the whole Inyan. We're going to get to the end of the next paragraph. Lamed base. And then, because then the next part will say, in contrast, the Avda B'chol Ma'idecha, which is the much more extreme form of Av. V'hinei, klolos Avda B'chinas Ava Hanal, hu b'keiches hagiluyim shebenefesh. This Avodah, which we've described above, of Avas Hashem b'chol lavav v'chol nafshecha, is an Ava which is a product of a person's operating skills and talents and traits. So a person is an intellectual and is emotional, has all these abilities which are already in operation and apparent. The person is drawing on their skills of hisbonenus, which is their chabad, the chachma vid and das, which are already in operation. It's not using any elements of the nefesh which are in any way underdeveloped. Already the person's developed skills of reasoning, thinking, contemplating, absorbing, using mechadas to personalize it, internalize it, and then developing into an emotional response of ava. It's not like the person's never loved before, doesn't know what it means to have a love and a desire. It's manifesting a love and desire for something in a healthy way towards elikus. This ava is something that's born out of first of all, a hasaga, an understanding of something, and then a hisbonenus about it, which is, in the hisbonenus, you got bina, to understand it well, that's the hisbonenus limudis, and then the hisbonenus, which employs the mayachadas even more, the way of internalizing it and appropriating the ideas. So what type of love is this? This is a love which is an emotion which is governed by the person's intellectual consciousness. It's a rational love. Yeah? So the extent, the love that is going to be born out of this awareness, contemplation, understanding, is going to be only to the extent, it's going to be only as forceful and intense as its origin. The olul, the effect, is not going to exceed the cause. The ilah, which is the seichel, is going to determine the quality of the olul of the effect. The klolus ha'ava in shayach inyan abligvul. Generally speaking, when we talk about ava, we don't associate it with something which is pligable. A type of ava that has no boundaries whatsoever. Ava is not expected that it's going to get to the point where a person is going to be so in love with the thing they're in love with that they're going to expire. They can't contain it. Chilas ava, like we say. The whole point of this ava is because you appreciate that it's your life. So why would you die for it? You're enamored with your life. Your whole hisbonenus is that because just like I enjoy my life and everything, I want, and now I realize the reality of all life is chayes halikus. I want more chayes halikus. I want more life. The whole premise of this hisbonenus is an appreciation of life. We say re'ei nasati lefanecha sachayim esatei b'dam aviz rahu b'chata b'chayim. The whole hisbonenus, this ava is where this ava originates, is in a hisbonenus about what? B'chata b'chayim. You want life. We're trying to maintain life, perpetuate life, enhance life. You're not going to become bleedful to the point where you're going to expire from it and have klois hanefesh. Klois hanefesh hu hepech hachayis. The whole thing of klois hanefesh is you die. Your soul leaves your body. Such an ava doesn't make sense. Why would it would such a, if the olul is determined by the ilah, and the whole ilah is, the whole hisbonenus is around the virtue and the value of life, then you're not going to come to the opposite conclusion in the feeling. It's not going to generate the opposite feeling. So the ava in general is mugbo, is limited and contained within the confines and the constraints of the seichel which gave birth to it. Also, well, it's not just in general. In detail, it's involved. Every single aspect of the ava is going to be constrained and contained by the seichel which originated it. Because what are you really being mispainted about? The original seichel which spurned this ava is a sponsor on what? How the chayes of alikus is mislabish in the ilamis. Mislabish b'seichel ilamis lachiyesam. The whole, that's all you're thinking about. You're not thinking about ein seif habligavul. It's not part of the, it's not a topic for discussion over here. The topic for discussion over here is there's a chayes alikus which is mechayim mahavis kol ilamis. Fine. And so a person, through their own self-awareness about the relationship with their own personality and their characteristics and all those things, and how that relates to their body, can follow that line of thinking and realize how there's a chayes alikus which is mechayim mahavis kol ilamis. And that is the ikka. What is the chayes aliki which is mechayim mahav la'ilamis? It's not atmos ein seif. It's not ein seif abligvul. It's ha'ara bilvad. She'ein arich klal l'gabi muhusli v'atzmusi yisbarich. It's a mere reflection of the Eir Elyon. And it's mugbul. And it's contained. When it comes to being mechayim ahavis ha'elamis, what is the chayes aliki which is needed to do that? It's a ziv and ara. Why? Because otherwise it has to be mugbul. Otherwise the thing wouldn't be able to be contained. So even in its origin, before it actually comes in this mislabish in every single individual thing, it was only a machshava achas, right? The creation of the world was not so. It's treated, is described as something being as something that's secondary, that's superficial, that's irrelevant. So we have in Tanya, it talks about the ein aroich of all your meisim legabi your dibun, your gabi your machshav, and your machshav legabi your midlis, and your midlis legabi your seichel, and how all these things are completely bottled and insignificant and ein aroich to the etzem nefesh. So when it comes to Lamaila, creation of the world, machshava achas, a machshava achas. How many machshavas does a person have? Machshava achas, nivru kol eilamis. So horrible bad. Shal ze omar, we say davening, baruch sha'ama v'aya eilam. Spoke the word. One dibur. Machshava achas, one dibur. So. Shu b'chines amira achas levad. Just like one stray thought in a person is not considered of any significance in the context of the entirety of the person. It's not only bottled to the person, it's bottled to the whole machshava. The kech machshava can think ribu machshavis. One machshava. Sheyochel actually machshavas harba adin kates. So how much more so when you get to the Musa Nefesh? What's this machshava achas? The whole chayes ha'olam is a horrible bad. Kach achas kam bekam she'im machshava achas zu nechsheves klal legabi musi b'atz musi ein seif. Mus b'atz musi ein seif. Atu kedim shnivrei lam, atu l'achas shnivrei lam. The atom, the eibish, the atmos muhuz, no difference before now. It's like as if it never happened. It's insignificant. A horrible bad. The chayes ha'olam is a horrible bad. Of total insignificance. The Eibush doesn't change. Why does the whole creation of the world not change? How big shilas we have nichsides, right? Here is every lishanisi. It's not tifas malkim bichlal. The gabi musli vatz musli body is not tifas malkim bichlal. By the avoida anal b'chinas b'chol avavcha v'chol nafshecha abo misad esponis b'chinas aziva orah v'hashayich lo'elamis haru mamshich rak gilu b'chinas ulevat. So the sach hakol, the outcome of this esponinus, which is brilliant in the fact that it's able to be effective. A person can actually say mipsorech seleka. You don't have to be. You have to dig deep into some, emunah. And think that you can think poshet. I see the way that my body and my personality, my character, my nefesh, myself is operates. And if I think a bit deeper about that, I can come to a realization about the whole world. Fine, and you can make a difference yourself, and you can love Elokus, and you can become a frum yid and a chassidish yid, and you're not going to koch him in taivas. And you're going to engage in Torah mitzvahs, and you're going to do business like a mensch in order to make a parnas, in order to give to tzedakah, and you're going to eat and drink the Shem Shemaim. It's going to be wonderful and everything. But, and this is the but, it's mugbal. It's very, very mugbal. In the grand scheme of things, in relation to Asmas Unas Ein Tzei Baruch Hu, it's dealing with a mere ha'ara. The big desire, the big ava that you want to have is spashus and gilui of elikus in the world. That ava doesn't want a gilui of atmos and seif. Doesn't know about atmos and seif. The ava originates in the hisponinus, and the hisponinus is only thinking about the chayes aliki, which is mislabish ne'elamis, which we've just described and explained is like a machshava achas and amira achas. It's bein aroich. It's a horrible bad. So what do you want? You want that ha'ara. You want the thing that is going to facilitate the ava that you have, based on the hisbonenus that you had, which is a ha'ara b'ziv bilvad. And what we're going to find out, moving on to the next section, will be that Avda B'chol Meidecha takes you to the next level. So we're not building it's a myriadic thing and a geschmack arichas to help us get there. But that's not the whole picture. There's the picture, the completion of the picture is understanding about Avda B'chol Meidecha. And just to not lose thread of what we're talking about over here, what we're trying to explain is why did Hashem create the world in Midas Hadin? And what we're going to see is that by creating the world in Midas Hadin, it facilitates the extraordinary Avda B'chol Ma'idecha that we're going to describe in the next section. And we're going to describe how fantastic an Avda B'chol Ma'idecha is, and how extraordinary it is. And if Hashem would have created the world in Midas Hadin, it would have been possible that we could have been in a state of people could have been in a state of Avda B'chol Ma'idecha the whole time. Would have been extraordinary, and it would have been the fireworks would have been fantastic. In the on a Avodas Hashem would have been on an extraordinarily higher level, and that's why it was desirable. That's why Hashem would have wanted it. Not that he wanted to beat everyone up and treat everyone badly. He wanted, by this gilui of Midas Hadin, is the means by which a person can reach a state of Avda B'chol Ma'idecha. But again, this is what we're going to see when we do the next part, which we'll do tomorrow, Be'ezras Hashem.